Okay, so I'm recording now. So hello and welcome to this Soul Alignment Masterclass. And I do apologise for any of you who missed the notification that I wasn't going to be running it at 11 o'clock. I just woke up this morning and just felt really exhausted, felt really tired. I'd had a half-day session with a client yesterday, which was wonderful and lovely, but this morning I woke up and I was exhausted and I needed to listen to my body and honour that, because I wouldn't be very aligned with my soul if I just pushed through. So that's why I changed it to this afternoon. Now, just to run through what, sorry, I'm just being distracted. Yeah, it's like I'm only in a small box at the top and I'm not quite sure why that is happening. So I'm not going to worry about that. Yes, so where was I? Yes, so the session today, what we're going to be covering, so we're going to be talking a little bit more about soul alignment, so how it came about, what it is, and why do we bother? Why am I even teaching about soul alignment? And then I'm going to be sharing with you some easy soul hacks, so some techniques that you can use to feel more connected to your soul. And then I'm going to be sharing the one thing that really has made a massive difference to me in the last month or so. Now, I'm not going to be sharing any slides, mainly because when I went back over the masterclass that I ran in November, I just suddenly realised that I just don't feel aligned to that way of working anymore. So the information's still the same, but I just feel called to be a bit more freer with my presentation rather than being rigid and, you know, having nice flashy slides. So part of that's quite scary because I do like control and I like to be perfect. So I'm completely delivering this masterclass unscripted and unprepared. And well, the preparation I have been doing is meditation today and just asking the archangels and the ascended masters to speak through me today. So this is a new one, and if you read my post that I wrote a couple of days ago, was it yesterday or the day before, about fear and doubt, and I was writing about how, you know, one of the exercises that I was doing was having a bit of play with fear and imagining fear stepping outside of me, and the fear was giving the fear a character, and it was the Cookie Monster. Just don't ask why. I really don't know why. My fear looks like the Cookie Monster. So right now the Cookie Monster is freaking out because he likes control. So there you go. So okay, so I will also be sharing a little bit about myself, and then just to reassure you, I think, because sometimes you can hop onto masterclasses and webinars and, you know, expecting to get loads of content, and then, you know, half of the session is just one big, you know, marketing ploy for a program. I'm not going to be doing that. I just wanted to do this masterclass because I just wanted to share some more information with you. At the end, if you are interested in working with me, I'll give you my email address, and that will be the only pitch that I do. Okay, so let's get started. So a little bit more about me. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Jane Jackson. And I don't really like labels, but if I had to label myself and say what it is that I do, I'm a soul coach and an emotional freedom technique practitioner. But do you know what, that just kind of narrows it down, because what I do is so much more than that. And I tend to work in many different ways, calling in. I work with angels. I also do a lot of law of attraction work. I do kind of regular straightforward coaching. So I tend to use a variety of things, drawing on my own experience of how these things work. Okay, so a big part of my story has been about, I guess, rewriting and rewiring my story. So I was born into trauma, and I believe that as a soul, I made a conscious choice to be born into a family where there was childhood abuse, and where there was different types of chaos and trauma. So it wasn't just the sexual abuse that I experienced, it was also emotional. And I made that choice because I know as a soul, my role has very much been about learning to overcome the pain of trauma in order to find ways to communicate and to support others through their own journey. And so it's not an easy choice I made. And you know, when I look back over my life, there are times when I think, did I really choose that shit? But hey, I did. I survived. More than survived. I actually love my life totally and completely. And the processes that I share really help me to move from being a victim to being a conscious creator of my life. So, as well as experiencing childhood trauma, I then went on to, the only way I knew how to deal with trauma at a young age was to start using substances to control some of the difficult emotions that were coming up. So from a very young age, from about the age of 14, I started using alcohol as a way to really hard to say that, anesthetize myself, to dampen down those feelings and emotions. And that just got worse over the years. I ended up also experimenting with drugs at one point in my life, and that's when things just kind of got a whole lot worse for me, and a lot harder. In between that, I was kind of trying to be normal. So I did have a family. I had children at a young age, and I did marry my first husband. But with all of these unspoken and unresolved issues from my past, I didn't know how to be in a relationship successfully. I didn't know how to relate. I didn't know how to communicate. And it just was bringing up all of this garbage from the past. So I eventually had a massive breakdown and ended up in a psychiatric unit. And I fondly recall that time as, you know, when I think of that time, I'm always reminded of the line from the book, A Tale of Two Cities. So it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Or was that the other way around? It was the worst. Anyway, whatever way around it is. So it was the worst of times, because I got to that point where I thought, do you know what, I cannot sink any lower than I actually am at the moment. You know, here I am in a psychiatric unit. I'm divorced. My kids are away with their father. He's found a new partner. I'm no longer needed. There isn't any point in my life anymore, or so I thought. It was the best of times because it was the catalyst for me for change. Because during my time in the psychiatric unit, I'd gone in there rather naively expecting to receive some answers as to what was going on and why all of this stuff was happening to me, and why, I just felt so depressed all the time. And what I found in the psychiatric unit was a community of people who had various troubles and torments, and the gift that I got from them was, I guess, to start embracing life a bit more. So I didn't find the answers from the psychiatric system. I found hope and faith from those that I was sharing space with, if that makes sense. So having received a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, it was one of those moments when, I just felt the anger rise in me, because at that time, we're talking about, I think 16, 17 years ago, something like that. At that time, and I don't know if it's changed much, I hope it has, but at that time, it was a diagnosis that when you received that, in the one breath, we know what's wrong with you. You've got this diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. And in the next breath, but there's absolutely nothing we can do to help you. The best that you can ever hope for is that you will learn to live your life from crisis to crisis. And this rage started to bubble up inside of me, this rage that I just wouldn't accept that this was my truth, that this was my reality. I didn't want to accept that diagnosis or that label from a doctor, as lovely as he was, who actually had no fucking idea what it was like to live with childhood trauma. So I made it my mission to find a way out, to find a way to completely recover, to, I guess, stick two fingers up at the psychiatric system and say, fuck you, you don't know what you're talking about. Really sorry, I do swear a lot, I should have mentioned that. So that's what I did. I had various different treatments and therapies, and took what made sense from some of them and discarded what didn't from the rest, until I got to a place where I'd made peace. I'd made peace with my past, and I was able to just, I guess, get on and have, have a fully functioning life. But what I kept finding was that every now and then things would keep triggering. And like when I met my current husband and we started in a relationship, and when we moved in together, that I noticed that, trauma was starting to raise its ugly head again. And it was like, I know, I thought I dealt with all of that. And what I realized was that whilst we can make logical sense of our past in our head, it doesn't actually help to rewrite or rewire the programming that we received. And so, a long story short, I came across emotional freedom technique, and that's when things really started to shift and clear, and so that I could view some of the past trauma and not have that intense emotional response. Now, the upshot of that is that I've managed to overcome chronic fatigue syndrome. And I did that in just after the 3 days training that I had with emotional freedom technique. My life had got to a point where, I couldn't do a full working week. I was having to take afternoon naps all the time. I went to do the emotional freedom technique training, not really knowing if I was actually going to be able to last a whole day, because it had been a long time since I'd been awake, throughout the whole of the day. But I did. And what I found after those 3 days was, oh, this is really interesting. I'm not needing to take a nap anymore. And the more that I connected with the tapping, the more my energy levels started to increase. And what I realized was that just tapping on acupressure points and releasing some of the past traumas stops that production of cortisol, and actually helps your body to start recovering. Do you know, and I've gone off on a tangent. I had no idea I was going to be talking about that. Sorry, I'm getting lost. I'm going to get back to the whole point of this masterclass, is to talk about soul alignment. Now, soul alignment is, so how did I come about this? So last year I was working with a coach. I'd invested quite a bit of money to work with an amazing coach, because as much as I knew that I was a good coach, and I knew that I was very skilled at using the emotional freedom techniques, I was not attracting clients to work with me or to pay to work with me. So I knew that I had some serious blocks going on, and I didn't know what it was all about. So I found myself a soul coach, because I worked a lot on the business side of things, and the usual marketing tips just weren't working. So I knew that I wanted a deeper connection to my soul, and I wanted someone to be working with someone who was going to honor that side of me. So when I was working with her, I think it was about the second week I started working with her, I came down with flu, and my whole body was just aching all over. And I couldn't do anything but surrender to how I was feeling. And so I had to just cancel everything that I was doing, and I stayed in bed for a week. But what I did was I started to listen to lots of meditations, listen to lots of other inspirational speakers, so that I was constantly connected to my deeper truth. And what started happening was, even though physically I felt dreadful, in my head I just felt amazing. I felt really so incredibly blissed out and serene. And by the end of the week, I was doing some journaling and just kind of pondering about, how is it that I could work with people? What is it that I'm being called to share? And this word just dropped into my head: soul alignment, and helping people to align to their soul. And I can do that through coaching, and I can do that through the emotional freedom technique, because in order for us to really be able to align to our soul, we actually need to clear away some of the garbage, some of the blocks from particularly our childhood or from our past that are holding us back. And that's where the emotional freedom technique is really, really useful. So soul alignment is about helping you to connect on a deeper level to your soul, so that you have that sense of feeling blissed out and happy and connected. Now, why bother? Why can we not just carry on as we are? Well, of course you can. That's always a choice, isn't it? But connecting to your soul means that you're living your life that's soul-led rather than ego-led or ego-driven. And when I talk about ego, what I mean is ego in the sense of, not arrogance or anything, but ego in the sense of the I that you identify yourself with. So your ego is made up of all of your past experiences, your thoughts and your behavior and your programming, whereas your soul is part of divine truth, and it's unaffected by your past. It's unaffected by what's going on around you. So when we can live our life more from a soul-led basis, we're not living a life driven by fear or driven by our past or driven by our limitations. And the thing is that the ego just wants to play it safe all the time. It wants to keep us safe, and in order to do that, it likes to keep us small. So it doesn't like us taking any risks. Like, when I started this and my Cookie Monster fear in my head was freaking out, because that's not safe to show up and do a masterclass completely unprepared without any slides. But the soul actually wants us to soar. The soul wants us to fly. The soul knows no limits and no limitations, and just wants us to connect to the divine truth of who we are and to shine our light out into the world. And it's as simple as that. So I wanted to share some easy soul hacks with you. So if you've taken part in the 5-day journey into soul alignment, I was showing you various techniques. And the thing is that being in alignment with your soul is not just about goal setting or setting intentions. It's so much more than that. It's making a choice to live your life fully every day, connected to your inner being. And there are ways in which you can help yourself to do that. One of the ways is through meditation. And I know a lot of people struggle with that, and I do as well, I'll have to be honest. I still haven't been able to master the art of just sitting in silence for 10 or 15 minutes and allowing my thoughts to just drift and staying still and present within myself. I still struggle with that. But what I do is I find some lovely guided meditations, and I will listen to those on a daily basis, whether it's in the morning or in the evening. And I find that helps me to restore myself back to connection. Now I wanted another thing, so that's one thing, meditation. So the next thing I wanted to mention was about sleep. Sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of my tea. So, gosh, that's strong. Sorry, I've made myself some fresh ginger tea, and that really does knock your socks off. So the next thing to mention is about sleep. Now, how can we prepare our soul? How can we be more connected to our soul when we're sleeping? Well, quite often what a lot of people do before they go to bed is they might start worrying, or they might start thinking about the day that's just gone. and running it over like a movie in their heads, replaying what went well, what didn't. But sometimes you might get stuck on some of the stuff that's not going so well in your life. Now, if you go into sleep thinking about the stuff that's not going right for you, the stuff that's not going well, then what happens is that this is what you start brewing over and unconsciously ruminating over as you sleep, and it goes into your subconscious, so that when you wake up in the morning, you are going to be attracting more things like that into your experience. So a few minutes before you go to bed, it's a really good time to spend in gratitude. So thinking about the things in your life that you are really grateful for. Now, I know that there are a lot of schools of thought that say, you should be writing your gratitudes first thing in the morning. I do it at night. I also do it in the morning. So if you're concentrating, if you're thinking about the things that you are grateful for just as you go to sleep, when you wake up in the morning, you're more likely to reconnect to the things that you are grateful for. And the more that you're grateful for, the more you will receive things to be grateful for, if that makes sense. Okay. So the next thing is to talk about affirmations and affirmations. So affirmations being statements of how you would like yourself to be. So statements like, I am peaceful and I am happy. That would be an affirmation. Now, sometimes, personally, I use affirmations a lot, but a word of warning. Affirmations might not work if you haven't done a lot of the clearing away of the old stuff. And actually, sometimes the affirmations can trigger unwanted anxiety or anger if you haven't cleared away some of the other stuff. So if you're noticing that if you're writing affirmations, or if you're talking affirmations, or if you're even tapping in affirmations, and you notice that it's triggering some of these negative feelings, or it's increasing, then try switching them over to affirmations. And you can do that by turning it into a question. So rather than a statement of fact, I am peaceful, you can start writing or saying, why is it I am so peaceful? And what that does is it tricks the brain into looking for all the reasons why you are peaceful. And then you will start to feel peaceful. That's a really, really good tip. So the next one to talk about is journaling. Now, I know that some of you do journal quite a bit and some others don't. There is massive resistance around it. All I will say about journaling is that try it for a good few weeks before you dismiss it completely, because what happens in journaling is that you can just start to release what is on the surface and it can help you to get deeper into what's really going on. So the journaling exercise that I shared in the group and that I do on a daily basis, I'm going to hold my hand up here and say I don't do it every day. I try to do it every day, is to have a conversation with my soul. So I will start the journaling by just offloading what is on my mind, and then just allowing my soul to respond. So my soul will always start with, Dear Jane. And what comes through is beautiful, and I know that it's divinely guided, and I know that it's not coming from my thinking head, it's coming from my heart, from my soul, from my inner being. So that's a really beautiful exercise to do on a regular basis. So the other soul hack is tapping. So I do tap on a daily basis, even if I'm not tapping on the deeper issues every single day. I will start my day just tapping on the collarbone, tapping on the wrist. There's ankle points that I tap on. So I do some quick tapping. I might also combine it with some of the affirmations or affirmations, but I will do, and sometimes I'll do the quick tapping and then I'll do the full round of tapping, and I do that about 6 or 7 rounds. Because even if you're not saying anything, when you're tapping on those acupressure points, you're just switching off your automatic stress response. And we are just completely surrounded by stressful things all the time. So when you tap regularly, you're just reducing the amount of cortisol that's running around your body. So it's going to start helping you to feel better emotionally. Your head will feel a bit clearer. But also you might start noticing that physically you're not getting as many colds, or your physical health starts improving. Now, one of the things that I do need to mention for those of you who are fairly new to emotional freedom technique and tapping, one of the things that can happen and does happen is that when you start getting into the habit and the routine of tapping, that you find you physically become unwell quite quickly. And so you might start getting colds and flus, or you might have an increase in a current physical condition. Now, the reason for that is not because the tapping's not working, or the reason is that you are just connecting to some of the difficult emotions that you've been suppressing for so long. And what that is doing is it's reactivating your immune system, because when we're in stress all the time, our immune system shuts down. Because if you think about the whole fight, flight, and freeze response, if you're trying to escape a life or death situation, you don't want to be worrying about catching a cold or something like that. So when your fight, flight, and freeze response has been activated, your immune system shuts down. Okay, and that's why a lot of people are experiencing over long periods of time autoimmune diseases. So when you start tapping, you start reactivating your automatic immune system, and getting colds and things like that is just it's just your body's way of eliminating or fighting off illness and germs and dis-ease. Hope that makes sense. Doesn't happen for everyone, but I've noticed it happening quite a lot, so I thought it's important to mention. So the next thing that is really important for helping us to stay connected to our soul is exercise. Now, why exercise? Because when we exercise, we're moving our bodies. We are reconnecting to our bodies, to movement, to energy. So whatever exercise feels right for you, and whatever your physical abilities, just try introducing something that works for you. Just 5-10 minutes a day, just to get your body moving. And for those who do experience physical challenges, there are a lot of chair yoga exercises that you can do that are really good to help with breathe. It also helps with the breathing and just moving your body. Okay, so the next soul hack is music. So using music to reconnect to your soul. Now, music was the thing I think that really helped me to keep a sense of myself when I had my breakdown, because there was a lot of crazy shit going on in my head, and it really did feel like, you know, there was some weird faulty wiring going on in my head, because I found it difficult to follow conversations. I found it difficult to be able to say what was going, because it was like everything was a jumbled mess in my head. But what I found was listening to classical music through earphones really helped to quieten that all down, because music works on a different sound. It works on sound vibration and helps to connect to the soul on the vibrations of sound. So classical music, but it's not just classical music. Someone asked me the other day, what music do I listen to help me prepare myself when I've got a session coming up with a client, or when I know I've got phone calls to make? How do I activate myself? Well, I listen to a track by Faithless called Insomnia, and it's one of the real classic kind of, is it house or tech? It's not techno, house tracks, dance tracks from the 90s. Not the sort of thing you would expect that would help me to feel activated and connected to my soul, but it does. And what can I say? It works for me. So the next thing is play. And one of the things that we forget so often as we get into the seriousness of life and being adults is we forget to play. Just observe what children are like when they are engrossed in some playful activity. Notice how peaceful they can be and how totally absorbed in the moment they are. We can have that again if we allow ourselves to be more playful. So find something to be playful with. One of the things I like to do, especially when, you know, everyone's at school, is to go to a playground and go on the swings. It really is great. It really does energize you as well. But I avoid the roundabouts. God, that makes me dizzy. So the last thing I wanted to mention was about using other things. So using the energy of crystals or essential oils. Any of those things are really incredible in helping that deeper connection to the soul. Okay, gosh, that was a lot, and I'm sorry if that was quite a lot to take in. But I did promise to share with you the one thing that really has made a big difference to me over the last 6 weeks, month. And it's this technique that my coach calls pre-membering. So, and I liken it, I call it my fast track manifesting, because when I started doing this exercise, everything that I had visualized and imagined came into being. All right, so I'm getting ahead of myself. So what is pre-membering? So it's about taking yourself into the future, so into a future version of yourself, and either writing or speaking or recording yourself as if what you want to manifest has already happened. Let me give you an example. So a month ago, excuse me, now having had a swig of very strong ginger tea, I'm now wanting to burp. Really do apologise. Okay, so a month ago, I was preparing to do the Best You Expo for the second time. And I was using this pre-membering exercise and imagining myself after the expo experience had happened. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I'll read out what I wrote. So about a week before I was going to be at the expo, I wrote this down. So it's 3 p.m. on Saturday the 17th of February 2018 at Olympia in the Mindfulness and Wellbeing Room. And I am amazed that there are still a stream of people coming in to listen to my talk. It's standing room only as I get started, and I'm feeling buzzed and excited as I start, and the introduction slides are playing, allowing me the time to ground myself and get centered. I'm delighted that the love and energy all around me from the angels and my guides allows me to speak from the heart with passion and inspiration. And the audience are hanging on to my every word as I explain what happens when we are in a constant state of survival, when I talk about my experiences of early childhood, and I bring the story around to the solution, and they want to know more. They want to know how they can work with me. They want to stick around to find out all the details, and there's a queue of people waiting up outside wanting to book an appointment with me. And so many people are coming up to me and saying how inspiring the talk was. And I think I did write at the end, and someone comes up to me and offers me a paid speaking opportunity. So this is what I wrote about a week before the expo. What I then did was record myself saying that. I think I recorded it, and I was saying, "Oh my God, it's like 4:30 on Friday, and I've only just been able to get away." And the excitement in my voice was as if it had already happened. Now the expo came, my talking session came, and right up until that point, I'd started to get a little bit fearful about what was going to happen. I'd noticed in the room that I was going to be talking, the person before me only had 6 people in the room. And here I was trying to kid myself that I was going to have a packed out room. But I kept listening to that track that I had recorded, and I went in there and I got exactly what I had visualized. I mean, exactly, to the point where there were people streaming in and standing room only at the back and sides. And when I was coming out after my talk, it took me ages to leave the room because so many people were stopping me and saying how inspiring it was. And there was this queue of people outside wanting to book an appointment with me, wanting to talk to me. I didn't catch my breath until about 4:30, and the talk had finished at 3:20. So, and there was, I'll be honest, there was a point when I walked out of that room and saw the crowd of people around me and the words that they were reflecting back to me. I just got a little bit overwhelmed because it was like, fuck, this stuff really works. It really, really works. And then I'd kind of forgotten that I'd even written about someone offering a paid speaking gig, because, you know, the one person that wanted to talk to me, she runs mental health training, and she said, you know, part of the training is we like to hear use the user voice, the experience of people who have lived experience of mental health problems. And she said, is that something that you'd be interested in doing? And I said, yeah, well, you know, it's something that I used to do in my former life. I said, but, you know, I'm not in a position any longer to do those talks for free. And she said, oh, no, we do pay. She said, I'm afraid it's not very much money. It's only £200 for an hour. So I just sort of said, yeah, that's fine. Whilst in my head, I was kind of doing like a happy dance. And it wasn't until a few days later, when I was looking back on what I had journaled, that I realised I had been really specific about someone coming up to me and offering me a paid speaking gig. So that's why I love this one technique so much, because it works really, really fast. And I even shared it with, so one of the sales agents for the Best You Expo. We've been talking quite a lot over the last year or so. At the end of the expo, when I was saying goodbye to her, she was saying to me, how did you do that? How did you get such a packed room? And so I told her about this exercise, and I said, you know, you should try it, give it a go. Well, she phoned me up a few weeks ago to say, oh, I've got to tell you, I tried that exercise. I wrote down what I wanted as if it had already happened. And then 2 days later, I got it. And she was like, I can't believe it. It's amazing. So that is my top tip for you for manifesting. But also I want to be really clear that that's not the only thing that works. I think it's like the icing on the cake. All the other stuff, all the soul alignment stuff, so connecting to my soul on a regular basis, listening to my fears, having conversations with my soul, those are the things that really make the difference. The pre-membering exercise is, you know, like the icing on the cake and the cherry on the top. So that's all I wanted to share today. And I know that I have one other person on the call. So I just wanted to invite you to, if there's any questions that you have, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away, and I'll see if I can answer.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, Elsie.
Hi. I have to be honest, I hope you've got a recording of this that we can hear later, because of my time, I've been listening to you, it's as if you've been sitting in the kitchen with me talking, because I've been preparing the meal for tonight because we're going out and I had to do it, and I was chopping up vegetables. But every time there was something, I sat down and listened to it.
Right.
I suppose for me, thank you for your wonderful sharing, because it has actually been quite humbling as well. It's wonderful to hear people's journeys and be able to identify with certain bits and not others, but, you know, realizing that we're all on this journey. And I think your honesty really is helpful. It really is helpful. I think my question would be about the manifesting, because I suppose there's a bit of me, and I'm still stuck on, where am I on your soul alignment? I couldn't find the bit of, when I've got these negative thoughts, how to do the bubble on the other side. I couldn't never find the picture that you said you were doing. But there's that bit of me is like, well, okay, I can say that. And I've done a sort of what I envisage for my, because that was part of your course, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And there's a bit of me, I put it down, but it's like, I'm looking at it. And when I looked at it, it was like, it was literally in your dreams, you know, this is too big. You're expecting too much of yourself. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is, in, what do you call it? You call it
Remembering.
remembering. I think because of my age, I'm sort of 72 now, and this particular thing was about sort of accomplishing something physical, which I think probably is, when I looked at it, it's like, I think you're being totally unrealistic here. And yet I wrote it down. So where does one go when those sort of thoughts take over? That I've actually been a little bit unrealistic. You see, yours for me almost made sense, because I would know, in terms of knowing you have that ability to draw that attraction, you know, but I'm asking for something which probably I shouldn't have asked for in the first place. That's what it's feeling like.
Okay, so I would say this because I know that you have done the emotional freedom technique training.
Yes.
So what I would recommend is that you explore those beliefs a little bit more about realistic, what it means about your age and being realistic with physical stuff, because there are women and men out there who are in their 90s who are doing physical challenges which, you know, people half their age wouldn't dream of doing. So I would challenge you in saying that it is our mind, our beliefs that are telling us can't do that.
Yeah,
it's not realistic. You're telling yourself it's not realistic, and yet there are other people that have gone before you who have achieved amazing feats of physical challenge and have been older than you.
Okay.
So it might be useful to seek out some of those stories.
Yeah.
Because then then you can use that to challenge your own beliefs.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yes, that's okay.
But also use it to unpick, okay, so where did these beliefs come from?
Where these, I suppose, physical reality. So in terms of, you know, like climbing up hills now, I get out of breath. I had years of smoking. My lungs are not as good as they were, you know.
So what you could do with the pre-memory, sorry.
That's my phone going off. Sorry about that. It's a lovely ring, but it's, yeah. Okay, sorry about that.
So what you could do with the pre-remembering exercise is just imagining what it's like. Well, you could just say, okay, so I've walked up the hill today, and how amazing was it? I didn't get out of breath. It felt wonderful. It felt incredible. I don't know how it happened, but it did. Because we are so conditioned and programmed to believe that as we get older, our bodies start deteriorating. And, you know, you only have to look at Louise Hay and look at some of the amazing things that she was still doing at 90 years of age.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
And Daddy Janky.
Yes, true. But she didn't have years of smoking, though, did she?
No, she didn't. No, she didn't. But again, it's, you know, you can use the power of visualization to visualize your lungs being clear and free. And I don't know if you were able to listen into any of the Tapping World Solution World Summit sessions, and there was I think Dawson Church talking about the genie in our genes,
right?
So we can actually tap to change our DNA structure.
Right, okay. It's strange. I actually, that's the one I haven't listened to, but I did actually buy the package, so I can go and listen to that. Yeah, so I will. Yes. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I wasn't going to, because I bought last year's package, but I thought, when I started, I was thinking there's stuff in here for me. I know there is. So
yes. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that. That's actually made me feel a bit sort of more positive. That yes, it is my self-talk. That's, if I'm not careful, I'll think myself old.
Yeah, because we can think ourselves old, we can think ourselves ill, we can think ourselves, on the flip side, we can think ourselves young, and we can think ourselves fitter and healthier. Yeah, so it's just about tricking the brain into believing that your body's in a different state to what it feels at the moment. And I do get how challenging that is, especially, you know, because I had years and years of the chronic fatigue and also chronic back pain, so I know how challenging that is.
Yes.
But I also know that, you know, I've had periods where I think I had like 7 years of never having a day free of back pain. And yet I know there were moments in those days where I experienced no pain. And those moments were when I was really connected and really aligned, I guess, and not thinking about anything else but just, you know, embracing joy. Really
Lovely. My computer's just come up saying my battery is running low.
Okay, nicely timed. So thank you, Elsie, for sharing that. And for anyone else who's watching on the recording, if you are interested in exploring working with me on a one-to-one basis, feel free to send me an email. Let's have a chat. I've got 4 spaces this free on Wednesday afternoon, where I can spend half an hour with you. So my email address is info@jane-jackson.co.uk. Thank you for watching and take care for now. Bye.
Bless you.